snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys, so it is the first day of June and that means it's time to do my May wrap up and my June TBR. So I'm going to quickly run through all of the books that I read in May and I'm going to give you guys a little bit of my thoughts on each of them, and then after this I will be filming my June TBR, so you can go and watch that after you watch this. I had a very busy month in May. As many of you guys know, I was at uni and I was finishing up all of my stuff. I am still at uni at the moment, but I am done with everything, completely finished. So I'm just waiting till I move back down south to where I live normally. The books that I managed to read alongside of my uni work I was quite happy with, because I actually got a fair bit of reading done despite having a lot of uni work, and I managed to read 12 books, which I was really happy with. So I don't have all of the books physically to show you guys. I have some of them but not all of them, because some of them are already packed for when I move out, but I'll put a photo up if I don't have the physical book. Any of the books in this that I don't have reviews up for yet will be up in the next few days hopefully, because I am trying to catch up with reviews. Seeing as May I didn't do very many, but most of these will have reviews up, if not all, and soon the others will be up if they're not up already. So let's get started. The first book that I read in May was Malice, which is by Gwynne. This is a very classic fantasy in the way that it's laid out. We have a lot of tropes employed throughout the story. We've got a lot of characters who are quite predictable, but actually the writing style is really wonderful, and I very much enjoyed this book. So even though it wasn't exactly mind-blowing, there wasn't anything that happened that really took my breath away or really surprised me. It was just really nicely written, and it was a good classic fantasy, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to continuing on with the second one, and I ended up giving that one a 4 out of 5 stars, and I would definitely say if you like classic fantasy, Gwynne is one to give a try to. Next I picked up Stormfront by Jim Butcher. This was a buddy read for me and I was really looking forward to this because I've not read any of the Dresden Files before now, and I've heard a lot of good things about the series as a whole, so I was very much looking forward to getting into it. And it didn't disappoint. It wasn't amazing, but it didn't disappoint either. I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. It's an urban fantasy where we follow a main character who is a wizard, and he's called Harry Dresden. He's the only magician or wizard who's actually actively practicing in the modern day world, despite the fact that there are lots of other wizards and magical beings in the world. He basically is an investigator for the police whenever it comes to magical crimes, and he's also his own PI investigator for anyone who wants to get him to work for them. So it's a pretty interesting concept. The world was definitely slightly lacking because it was only the first book and they're quite short. The characterisation was a little bit lacking again because it was quite a short book, but on the whole I enjoyed it. I thought it was easy to get through, so I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. I will be continuing on with the series in June, and hopefully I'll be able to finish up the series within this year, because we're planning to read 2 of them a month until we get it done. So I'm very much looking forward to continuing on with that. Next I picked up Timeless. Timeless is the 5th and final one in the Parasol Protectorate series by Gail, Carriger, and I absolutely adored it. It was fantastic. The last 2 books, or even the last 3 books, were just phenomenal, and I really enjoyed that series. I have done a review for them. Timeless is once again following all of the characters from the first 4 books, and I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, it was a great conclusion to the series, and I ended up giving that a 5 out of 5 stars. So I would highly recommend that series to anyone who likes witticisms and fun, because that is what that series really is. Next I picked up The Strange Affair of Spring Hill Jack, which is the first one in the Burton and Swinburne series by Mark Hodder. This is a fairly steampunkish series, but it's also got dashes of other things like sci-fi, fantasy. It's also very funny in terms of the historical setting that it's in and the way that the world has been changed. Basically this world is set in sort of 1800s England, and it's a really entertaining world because things have gone a little bit different from how our world was back then, and everything's a little bit crazy. They have different groups of people who are inventors, and they basically discovered science and things a lot earlier than we did in reality, and it's affected the world in some really odd ways, and there's a lot of fun in this book. It was really entertaining to read. I highly enjoyed it, and I think it's one of the best series that I've read in a long time, so I'm very much looking forward to continuing on. It's just got a lot of quirks and a lot of hilarity throughout it, and I really, really enjoyed that. So again, that was a 5 out of 5 star read. Really looking forward to continuing. Next, I picked up Emperor of Thorns, which is the third and final one in the Broken Empire series by Mark Lawrence, and I've been meaning to get to this for a while because I read the other two and I wanted to finish up the series. And I read this with Sam and Michael. Michael kind of chipped in because he's already read it, and we had a lot of fun doing it. But I did think that this book, although it was really interesting and although it was a somewhat satisfying ending, there were issues that I had with the ending, and there were a few issues I had with clarity, because a lot of it is told as though it's a fever dream. There's a lot of moments where you're not entirely sure if this is a real thing, if he's dreaming, if this is a memory from the past, if this is something he's thinking about. You don't really always know, and that's part of the charm of it, but it also means it can get a little bit confusing at times. So on the whole, I thought it was a really interesting story. I love the way that Mark Lawrence writes. I 100% will be continuing on with his works and checking out his most recent series, because I've not read any of that yet. But I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. Next, for my read-along group, I picked up Malazan Book 5, which is Midnight Tides. This is by Steven Erikson. It's part of the Malazan Book of the Fallen series, and I loved it. It was so, so, so good. Definitely my favourite of all of them that I have read so far. It was set on a whole other continent, and it was set in a completely different time before a lot of the other books, and it just recounted the kind of feud between the Idor and the Lether, and I loved it. It was so good. The characters we were following were really, really interesting. There was a lot of awesome stuff that happened, but also the characters just were so amusing and entertaining, and I loved seeing them and seeing how they developed. If you've not read the Malazan Book of the Fallen series because you're like scared of it or you think it's going to be confusing, I would definitely recommend giving it a go if you are up for a challenge. If you're not up for a challenge, I wouldn't give it a go, because it is a bit of a challenge to get into, but I think by the time you get to the third book, which I know is a massive amount of pages, it's like 2,000 something pages, but by the time you get to the third book, I think things really start to click and the series starts to come together a lot more, and I'm really enjoying seeing how it all unfolds and seeing all of these characters that Steven Erikson is fantastic at creating, and these scenarios that he puts them in that really, really test them. So that one was a 5-star book as well. Utterly loved it, and I can't wait to continue on with that series. Next, I picked up Ace of Skulls by Chris Wooding. This is the 4th and final one in the Ketty J series, and I was very sad to finish the series, but also very happy with the way that things sorted themselves out. I loved this book. I think it was the best one in the series, in my opinion, and it was just so much fun. The characters are fantastic in this series. They are some of the best characters I've ever encountered, and their relationships and their conversations are just hilarious to read about and follow. So I really, really would recommend you guys check out the Ketty J series. This one I obviously gave a 5 out of 5 stars to. It was fantastic. I loved it, and I will definitely be reading more of Chris Wooding's stuff whenever he releases more, and I also have a book of his that I'm planning to read sometime over summer. I cannot wait to dive into more of his work, but I really, really love the Ketty J series. Then I picked up Equal Rites. This is the 3rd book chronologically published in the Discworld series, but it's the first one in the Witches collection. It's by Terry Pratchett, and I absolutely loved the first 2 books, The Colour of Magic and The Light Fantastic. I really, really enjoyed them, particularly the second half, because they're kind of like one book's been split into 2, because the first one ends very abruptly, but the second one really got me hooked into the world of Terry Pratchett, and I want to read more and more of Terry Pratchett. I've been collecting these editions, as you guys probably will have seen, and I love them. So I'm definitely planning to read more Terry Pratchett over the summer. This one was a really nice little story about a young girl who accidentally gets made into a wizard, which is not technically allowed. People don't think that females can be wizards, and it's kind of her struggle of what she's going to do now that she's been accidentally made into a wizard. So I really, really enjoyed this. It was an awful lot of fun. I love Terry Pratchett's writing. He is wonderful as a writer. If you've never tried him out, I would 100% recommend that you do, because he's fantastic. And I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars, and it was awesome. So much fun. Next, I picked up The Blinding Knife, which is book number 2 in the Lightbringer series by Brent and I read this with my friend Will. We had a great time reading this. He's still reading it actually, but I had a great time reading this, and it was so fantastic. It was definitely a massive step up from the first one. I think this is Brent Weeks back on top form. The first one was good, but it wasn't amazing. This one I was definitely more hooked into. I like the characters more, I like the world more, I like the magic more, I like the plot more. It was all fantastic, and I really enjoyed seeing what happened to the characters. I cannot wait to continue on with the series and pick up book number 3, hopefully in June. And this one I gave a 5 out of 5 stars to. Next, I picked up Son of Heaven, which is the first one in the Chung series. Basically, this was a series of 8 books that was published, and then it was decided by the author that he wanted to actually republish the books, and he wanted to kind of revise them a bit and sort of sort them out and make the series longer. So he got a new publisher who agreed to this, and unfortunately that new publisher again cancelled the series 8 books in, so it's still only 8 books despite it being the new series. So I'm reading the new series, the Recast series, not the previous one, because I just found it and I thought it sounded interesting. And the one that I read is called Son of Heaven, and it's a prequel to the original series. So if you've read the original series, this book won't have been in it because this is a prequel that he added into the series. Yeah, it was supposed to be a big epic series, and unfortunately it has been cancelled at the 8th book. So I don't know how that is going to reflect in the books, in the reading experience, but it's a really interesting concept and the writing is really, really stellar. So I'm very upset that it has been cancelled because I would love to read the whole series. However, I do think it's worth reading. I enjoyed the first book a lot. I thought it was really, really well written. The pacing was good. The situation was really interesting. And I really look forward to reading the rest of the books in the series, or at least the ones that are out. So this one I ended up giving a 4 out of 5 stars, and I look forward to seeing where the series goes. It's kind of sci-fi dystopian crossover at the moment, and we don't really know what's gone on, but we sort of discover the past of how this world has come to be so derelict and desolate, and all of the people in it are kind of separated off in small tribes and communities. And it's a really, really interesting idea and a really well written book. So I'm going to be carrying on with the series at some point, and I hope that it gets made into the full length series at some point. But I really enjoyed it, and I would say that it's worth investigating if it sounds like something that might appeal to you. And the final book that I managed to read in the month of May was The Rose and Thorn by Michael J. Sullivan. This one was a buddy read as well, and I really enjoyed this. If you've not read the Re-Area Revelation series, I wouldn't read this series first because this is a Re-Area Chronicle series, and although it is a prequel series to the Revelations, it actually makes a whole lot more sense, and things are so much better if you read the Revelation series first. This book made me laugh and smile, and it was so emotional and fun and interesting, and it was absolutely Michael J. Sullivan perfection. It was just so good, and I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. It basically follows Royce and Hadrian when they are a bit younger, and they are doing all of their various different missions and sort of sorting out their lives and how they're going to act as a duo of thieves. And they also meet some really interesting characters along the way, and their story interweaves with them, and it was just amazing, so much fun. And if you've never read this series, any of the Re-Area books, start with Theft of Swords and work your way through the book series because it is fantastic, and I would highly, highly recommend it. Those are all of the books that I read in May. I have a lot of books I'm still reading, and I have a lot of books that I'm planning for June, so I'm going to do them all in my June TBR. Thank you all for watching. Let me know if you have any comments about any of the books that I've read, and I will see you all very soon in another video. Bye! Me and you gonna have a little chat.